1, 2, 3. Is that working? Okay. There we go. What were you guys talking about? Horn repair?
Yeah,
Well,
it was fascinating.
I was talking about that I
Just gonna check.
that I just spent the day. I just had a small. I got a cheap leak light, which is a leak light's just a light that you put down your saxophone. It's what repair guys use to check and see if pads are sealing correctly. So basically,
Right.
press the key down and light comes out.
Yeah.
That's where the leaks are. And I used to kind of do rudimental repairs when I was like younger in a repair shop in Canada.
Right. Didn't you work at a guitar store or something?
Well, yeah, it was this place called Long and McQuaid, which was like, it's kind of like the Sam Ash of Canada.
Yeah, I remember it had a super like Long and McQuaid, just
Yeah,
like,
it's-
not a name that an American music store would have.
Yeah, and it's shout out Long and McQuaid, Canada's #1 music retailer.
Shout out Long.
And anyway, all that's to say, like I got this $10 leak light on Amazon. I just on a whim, and then I looked and I was like,
Just long, skinny lights, right?
yeah. I mean, there's different ones. This one's like an LED strip, and you just dump
They
it
have
down
them
the
for
instrument.
upright bass too.
What do you do on a bass?
Well, when you drop it in the F hole
Oh, okay.
to look inside and see if the post is up or see if there's any sort of like cracks in the
interesting.
bass bar or whatever.
So this was basically I looked in because I kind of felt like it was leaking a bit, and I just looked in, saw the leak, and I'm like, I can fix that fucking thing.
Yeah.
So I just like so I went and I bought there's these you can use any sort of torch, but it's like a butane torch.
Yeah.
And I bought one at Home Hardware. I'm like, I'm just gonna heat this bad boy up, reseal my pad, and fuck. Because the normal guy I've been going to is a great saxophone player named Tim Lin. And anyway, he's just out of he's a really good repair.
He's great. I played
Yeah.
a little concert at his spot.
Yeah, he's a great musician and also a very great repair guy. But he's out of town, so I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna try this.
I'm impressed with your DIY moxie. You really jumped in there.
Yeah, but
I'm scared of that stuff.
It's a cautionary tale because at the end of it, so this morning I like fill up the torch with butane, get it going, and like What are
you doing?
Well, what I was doing is I just instantly fucked it up even worse because I just like heated the pad up way too much because I haven't done any of this stuff in like 10 years. So I know the things, but like I know the general moves, and also that's the only other tool I have. Like there's other tools you need. It's like you don't just fix a saxophone with like a light and a torch.
It's like more like Raiders of the Lost Ark than it does.
It is like that though. Like a lot of for before we had regular repairmen at our disposal, the old cats were fixing horns with dollar bills and cigarette lighters and
yeah, if you talk to
quarters
old
and whatever
guys, they'll have like all sorts of like
there's all sorts of tricks you could use with them.
Yeah, DIY things because also like in general like I feel like there's the number of really on-it saxophone repair guys is a very small number.
That's true, and they all take forever to get you shit.
And I'm sure back in the day it was probably even worse, and so I think out of this necessity.
It's a good thing to be able to do, I reckon. There's so many fiddly little bits in that thing, and to be able to just do one thing, like refit a pad or find the spring that's fucked up and set it again. I don't know. That's
totally. Also, because the thing is that I mean, you adjust, but like it makes it so much easier to play if your instrument's working correctly.
Yeah.
And so you can just kind of like hook yourself up by if you know how to do it, and you can just do a quick little thing.
Right.
I think I was thinking of Tim. I'm like, man, it must be nice because he can just like get his horns are probably always working perfectly.
Oh yeah,
he's got his set there,
perfect shape.
It's like, and
I think Stacy said that Tim did some work for him, and it was like ridiculous.
Yeah, he did like a big deep dive into my instrument a couple months ago, and really like he really got some stuff that was just getting like that kind of stuff. You should like, I mean, really getting deep into it. I mean, you don't, but there's little things that this kind of is the routine maintenance stuff.
Right.
Anyways, all that to say, I just completely fucked it up and went from like being like a little resistant in the middle to completely unplayable. So like it was just like, and with 30 seconds in, it was just like fucked, and there was nothing I could do to like straighten it out.
So you got to go back to Tim.
I took it to someone else who fixed it today, and it was fine, which is really just what I should have
So cautionary tale for saxophone players.
yeah,
Don't fucking touch your own horn.
Don't touch your own shit.
Yeah, don't just go buy a torch and start just fucking.
Right.
Or if you've got a few days before your next gig, you
Yeah.
know, like go nuts.
Well, the
Start
real thing
taking shit apart and see
I
what
mean,
you find.
sort of, but sax repairs, they're expensive like bass
Yeah,
repairs,
true.
right?
Yeah. Well, you know, actually, the thing I was thinking as I was taking the train up to the repair guy was the real thing.
Shame you had, just like.
Yeah, and also like
Had bits of saxophone in a bag he was carrying up.
yeah. Also, I copped to him right away. The guy I went to was a guy named Perry Ritter, who's just been in like Midtown forever.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
And,
He's a
and
famous cat.
Yeah, and Perry's cool. But I just like part of me was like, do I want to admit to him that I was just like, because there's almost something kind of. I don't know if he would find it insulting, but he might find it insulting that I was at home, I'm like, man, what you do is not that hard. I'm just going to do it myself.
It's funny that we think about that. We don't want to insult the repairman by bringing him something to fix.
Be like, well, I mean, I said like, hey, listen, I was monkeying around because it would be like, wow, what it would be very obvious that something unusual happened. 'Cause
Right.
It's like it was so immediately so out. Anyway,
He must get that all the time, though. Don't you reckon the repairmen get that all the time? People just
I
trying
can't
to
be
fiddle
the
around
only
with their shit.
moron who's trying to like save
Yeah.
$50 by just being
Right.
like,
Definitely.
I gotta do-
Imagine how many like dads there are out there that like.
I could do that.
Yeah,
sure.
random sax in their basement, like family heirloom, and they're like,
well, you know, when I
"This
used to
looks
work
like
at
Home Depot, like I can."
well, actually,
You know?
that is a real thing. When I used to work at that repair shop, it was like a lot of it was just mostly student horns and rental instruments, and like for sure there were like dads who were not musicians, didn't really have any
They
knowledge
came
of the
in with like
instrument.
the perfect Mark VI that Train was looking for.
Well, no, what they did is like it's like their kids' instruments
serial
not working.
number 00.
No,
They're covered in solder.
Yeah.
it'd be like these dads with their students' instrument, with their like kids' instrument, and they'd be like, "I'm a general contractor, I can fix this shit," and then would like destroy the
Horn comes
instrument.
in with
Like,
like all sorts of dents.
like actually, yeah, because it would be
Put a
that.
few extra holes in there.
What about in the Outback, bro? Who was working on horns down there?
Well, I'm the right person to ask about that, having grown up on a kangaroo farm as I did.
You didn't, right? At all, right?
No,
You're from.
it doesn't even exist. What are you talking about? You've been to the Outback more than I have.
I went to it. We'll leave that topic alone. But I wasn't at the kangaroo farm. I was myself.
You went to a kangaroo farm?
There's no such thing as a
let's
kangaroo
leave that-
farm.
Let's let that one lie. But
All right, okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay.
No, I grew up in a big city, much like New York, slightly smaller.
Sydney.
But we have, Sydney. We had saxophone repairmen.
The
and,
listeners don't know what Sydney is. You can say the names of foreign towns.
I'm just not sure that people from Sydney want me to admit that that's where I'm from.
We might have some listeners from Sydney. Aaron Jans.
Is this going international? Is
Jansy's
it?
listening.
This is interesting.
So that's like kind of the Australian. Is this going international? No, it's
Yes.
only YouTube America.
Right.
Jeff's right-wing conservative views allow us only to yeah.
Don't slander me on the
No, I'm
podcast.
just
That
kidding.
was great. Perfect.
No, there's no listeners are allowed below 20th Street and above 110th.
Yeah.
No, I had an American repairman actually in Sydney. The best guy in town was a New York guy. So, I don't know. He was as difficult to deal with as, I shouldn't say this, but a lot of repairmen, the better they are, the more personality issues you have to deal with, I would say.
Absolutely.
They all have personality quirks, and spending time with them can be challenging and expensive.
Most
So-
definitely.
Yeah.
Probably like musicians. I don't know, but yeah, he was difficult to deal with.
Yeah.
So you just go whenever you need to.
Was he a cat? Did you play to?
Like a lot of repairmen, he had a reputation for having been a cat at one point,
Yeah.
but nobody alive had ever heard him. So he would just sit there and never play again. It's a good idea to sit on that reputation that you have from 20 years ago and never spoil it, never play
It's
again.
kind of like a bizarro
Yeah.
world.
Like, don't get up on Billy's bounce and totally fuck that.
Exactly right.
You know?
All it takes is one solo
It's
to
like a
ruin
Bizarro
everything.
World 27 Club, you know what I mean? It's like, oh man, he
That's
was
right.
just on his way. Like, but then you only got to make it to.
He retired and he refuses to play anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that'll also get, that's too bad because those legends won't exist in the future because like everything's so much more recorded now. So like the chance, like if it was in the 70s, you could be like, man, at X club that there's no recordings of or no anything of at all.
Yeah.
This guy used to fuck. It was like Train, but he had some other shit. It's like those
It's
stupid
like
things.
the middle of Columbus, Ohio, and
Yeah.
the Big Chief Lounge, and I saw this guy.
Yeah, and Alvin was in town and he played with him and he said that was the
Right,
shit.
exactly.
And like these like fucking local legends where, but
love
unfortunately no one's. It's like but no one's ever actually heard this guy ever play.
Yeah, no,
And he stopped playing because he was too tortured. You know, this is always
That's true, isn't it? Isn't it kind of sad? Like you.
But now it's just gonna they're just gonna like Google the guy on YouTube, hear him in like 20 years, you know, like it'll be 2040. They'll hear him like fucking sinking at some jam session that was like screen, and they'll be like, this guy's fucking terrible, and there'll be no local heroes,
Right?
And that's too bad because you know, especially in local pockets. I mean, especially if you're outside of the big
What's your
centers.
man's name? Not PJ Clark. That's
No, PJ Perry. No, PJ Perry's the
PJ
real
Perry.
thing.
Yeah.
PJ is very much the real thing.
No, yeah, but there's no. I mean, there's like probably lore about him killing it all through the 50s and 60s, but he's also still playing, right?
He's still playing and great, and he is killing. Actually, you know, it's actually he was the one guy.
What's the dude in Australia?
I played with him. He's an alto player, right?
Yeah.
He was out here maybe a few months ago, and there was a jam session that Rudy Petchow put together
Well, PJ was in town a few months ago.
maybe 6 months ago.
How old
Yeah.
was he? Is he? Sorry.
It's like in his
Six-
80s.
7.
PJ Perry was
Pretty
in
sure.
town.
Yeah,
Damn, man.
pretty sure.
Are you,
It was a Canadian alto legend.
Yeah, it's
Who was-
PJ.
Yeah.
I don't know
Pretty
Rudy
sure.
Petchow at all. He plays drums, right?
Yeah.
He plays
Great
with-
swinging drummer.
Plays with Jerry too, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
I think his big gig was with Jack McDuff, I think. So he was with
Jerry
Jack
being like
McDuff.
Rudy Petchow.
Right.
And I'll be like,
Yeah, great organ drummer. Like well, you can't get anyone better on.
what is it? AC loud?
It's not like really noticeable, but it might be a little bit. Let's turn that AC off and
Let's
get,
turn that
get,
AC
get this
off
thing
until-
cooking.
Oh,
we
let's
can give
get
the
hot.
listeners, like-
Fuck yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's more of like an ASMR. Yeah. So he put together a jam session, and PJ Perry was there.
Yeah, I think that was. I don't know what PJ was doing in town, but he was here, and it was a session at the Union. It was great.
Well, I'm very
A bunch of
sad
saxophone
that I
players
missed
showed
them.
up.
At the Union.
Maybe the second time in my life I've ever been to that building.
Are you a member?
I am not a member of the Union.
Are you a member? Are you a member
yeah,
of the
good
union?
question.
I am a member of the Union, although my dues are lapsed at the moment.
That's not surprising at all.
Oh my God! Any chance for Jeff to rip on me? That's pretty much what this podcast is going to.
That's okay. I'm happy to be here and listen to that.
Yeah. Well, you always have a nice quip to add.
We'll,
You know,
Is
we're,
it-
well, you know, we're subject to the queen, so you know there's a
Yeah,
certain
you
kind
guys
of
are
like
queens.
The king. That's right. Excuse me.
that was
King
close.
subjects.
King subjects.
All the king's horses and all the king's men
Right. That's
couldn't play anthropology once more.
pretty good. But there are some. I don't want to name them, but there are some like Canadian. There's Canadian legend
Like
stories.
lore of Canada.
Yeah, I don't want to like, because these are deeply held things. Like PJ was is an example of a guy who's like the real thing. And when I remember meeting old guys like Charles McPherson, and when I bring up Canada, they'd be like, "Oh, PJ." Actually, Billy Drummond once told me a story about that there was like this was maybe 20 years ago, some sort of session, and PJ was playing, and Lou Donaldson was there. You know, who notoriously loves everybody.
Yeah.
Yes. And
Content.
and but anyways, the story that Billy told me was that someone said like he was playing and someone says, "Oh man, PJ, he's like the cat up there in Canada." And then apparently this is what I thought, was that Lou turned around and was like, "Sounds like he's the cat down here."
Wow.
I was like, "Damn."
That's deep.
I kind of thought he would be impressed with him. He would like that playing. I
Yeah,
think.
for sure. Yeah.
Hey, how's Jeff's level, by the way? Because he's a chronic mumbler and he's not staying right up on the.
I'm doing my
Great,
best.
He's doing great.
He's doing
Doing
good.
great,
He's staying right up on it.
I'm keeping an eye on it.
I'm
Good,
just staring here. I'm making sure I'm not turning my head.
Didn't you just play last night?
Who, me?
Yeah.
No,
Sunday.
Sunday, two nights ago,
sorry.
yes.
Yeah.
And that was with Rudy, right?
That was with Rudy, and Kyle Kohler playing the organ, and young Charlie Sigler playing the guitar. Yeah, that was great down at Smalls.
Charlie's so killing.
He's really got it together, especially like playing in that kind of group.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the only group I kind of hear him play with, like organ and drums straight
Yeah,
ahead.
you don't hear him
shit.
play trio. I've done some trio gigs with him, but you know.
No, he's a great young player. I'm very impressed with him.
And sometimes you use a Kiko and you play with a Kiko and Ed, right? And
I've got a handful of organ players in town that I love to play with.
yeah.
We're lucky here that we have some great ones. It's hard when you travel.
Sure.
Finding,
There's nobody.
Well, There's a couple
Kyle's
around, but it's
If
hard
they're
to
listening, you're
I'm talking about you.
If you're an aspiring jazz student that's listening and wants to be, it used to be bass was like, yeah, play bass and you always work. Now
Right.
There's like fucking a million bass players in New York.
And also,
but all of them work.
They're all better than
Yeah, they're all, well,
they all work. Yeah.
yeah, they all work.
That's why I'm off. It's Tuesday night.
Yeah, that's why you're sitting here with two saxophones.
Yeah, I'm like, I got no gigs. I'm gonna.
But there's kind of a resurgence in organ playing these days. So there's a lot of call for it.
Yeah.
And like I have to get in early to get my guys because they're working all the time.
R.I.P. Joey D.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, actually.
But all around the world, we need more of them. So you're right. Speaking of playing at smalls, can I ask you guys if you have an opinion about change in audiences over the time that you've been playing in New York? And as a whole, have they changed, do you think?
Wow, this is very relevant to what I've been thinking about. I think audiences are like completely fried from their phones.
Okay.
Like
As in humanity is fried, like everybody is fried from their phones? Okay, yeah.
And I feel it sometimes as a listener that's at a concert, like it takes me an extra 20 minutes. You know, you go in the Vanguard and the lights come down, and I feel like it used to be like, boom, like you're focused, like going to the movie theater or something like that. Mm-hmm. But then it's like, because you're so buzzed from looking at your phone all day, it takes me like another 20 minutes to like,
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it really makes parts of your brain whiz around that you wouldn't normally use if you didn't have that constant stimulation happening, I think.
You know what I did the other day? I went to the Vanguard last Sunday to hear Aaron Parks' band, which was great.
Yeah, I'm
was
really
great.
sad I missed that.
And it was Billy Hart and Ben Street, and then our friend Ben Solomon, which was so great to hear him. And it was really wonderful music.
I heard they played one of his tunes too, right?
I think they did, yeah. I thought, although I can't remember if it was on the set I heard. But anyway, yeah, it was great. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
But you know what? I did it a little differently. So first of all, and I kind of felt like I had this thought. I think the previous time I was there, is that first of all I bought tickets.
Nice.
Instead of
Very good.
which is
Very good.
which to some people might not sound like a novelty, but but buy tickets and showed up like really early, like showed up an hour before,
That's awesome.
and just sat down and
There was still a drummer that was like already there. Right.
There actually was. There's that one guy that like puts his like is there at 5 o'clock and just stands on the street like for 2 hours. People walk past him. They just think he's like.
It's like they're waiting for Tony Hawk 3 to come out. You know what I mean? They're like.
And they're there, and then
They've got their sticks in their hands.
Right.
They
Yeah.
want to be known.
I heard when somebody went to see, not to interrupt you, but somebody went to see Brian Blade there, and they were like, "All right, I'm gonna get there like 7:05," and the drummer's row was already totally full. I'm like, God damn it.
yeah.
So
But we just sat there and like got a bottle. It was my wife and I. We got a bottle of wine and just kind of sat there and leisurely hung and just talked for like, basically an hour.
how great is that?
And then the music started. And I gotta say, like, I think that there was something about just like really just settling into
Getting
the
settled.
space, not trying to like guest list or get in, show up 5 minutes before the set and just kind of hustle into the back and then just kind of like be there. I felt like there was something about really just like making it a thing that set it up so that when the music started, you were kind of like in that mode. It wasn't like, and I think that actually probably with some audiences, especially, I mean, one of the things that keeps New York going in lots of ways, there's so much tourism, so many people coming to everywhere in the city.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes especially maybe early sets, which are oftentimes like tourist sets at places, you can kind of feel that these people are just like this is like stop 8 on the day.
Well, they're like firing in from like Cheesecake Factory. And
that's right. And they're kind of fried on whatever. And then all of a sudden they're like listening to like Abraham Burden's band just fucking tear or whatever it is, or Nick or any of that. And it's like, and I think lots of them connect with and get into it. But sometimes I think if rooms can just feel kind of flat sometimes, oddly flat. And I think that it's usually earlier, and it's usually for that, like they've come in, they haven't had anything to drink. Not that they've had drinks, but there's this kind of almost just like And I think that might be it. A part of the element too is that kind of
it's definitely that like frenetic New York energy.
And then they get settled, and they might just be tired, and there's a big, I think that's the thing, and it can be, it's nothing about the music itself, and I think it's not even necessarily that they're not enjoying it, but there's just kind of the energy of like what what's been happening before. Like, what is this? How's this fitting into their day? Different than like I'm going out, and this is like part of like being out in the longer thing. Like, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I just think the audience has changed just in the fact that, like, exactly what you were talking about. It used to be a lot of New Yorkers. Mm-hmm. Like I guess I've been here 20 and a bit years now, and I feel like there was a time when audiences were at least partly locals, people coming out to hear jazz on their night off. Mm-hmm. You know, I feel let's go out. And I guess it's true that it's the early sets are trickier than the later ones. But if I do the 7:30 set at Smalls, but it also happens like if I do the Django at 10:30, you're faced when you walk out on stage with just people staring at you because they've never seen this before. A lot of these people, like you say, exhausted after a day of sightseeing. Usually, it's all tourists, and it's probably their first time in a jazz club. Yeah, and it's one of the things that they have to cross off their list when they're in New York is to go and hear some jazz. Sure. So they don't know how to respond to this, and it's pretty weird. Like, if you've never seen this before, seeing 4 people walk onto a stage and act the way we do, it's an odd thing. And I find that these days, increasingly, more of my energy is going into bringing them on side.
Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, definitely.
Getting their energy up and getting them used to the idea of responding. Because sometimes, like, you guys know what it's like when you're playing and you're getting nothing back from an audience.
That's happening more often than not now.
This is what I'm saying.
This is happening constantly.
It's
I've
really
been on
hard.
some gigs where it's been like all firing on all cylinders and just emotionally deep. And you know, a spot like Smalls is going to be like a little bit of a mixed bag, obviously. I mean, actually, it's a lot of tourists now. It really is. And the demographic has changed. But like something like Blue Note's a little bit different because it is like all tourists. Yeah. But the way that it's set up is like a pop concert in a way. It's like the audience is down here and it's dark. And then here's the stage. And then like they're kind of will like go wild for anything.
Do you think they feel a little bit more anonymous?
There's amazing music there, obviously, all the time, and people get into it, but people really get into it. You know what I mean? Right. So it's like, and I don't know whether that's like, I think it's got a lot to do with the phone, too, because people are just like, they're not engaged. The thing you're talking about with energy, you're sending them something, and there's nothing bouncing back off the wall.
But I mean, it may be phones, but it also may be just a lack of interacting with live anything.
Right, from interacting with the phone.
But phones, but TVs and whatever. But I think we're saying the same thing there.
Yeah.
But it becomes, I think it is kind of our job to bring people in. Like, I certainly think of that as part of my job when I'm at least band leading is I've got to bring these people around. And I just find more and more a larger part of my energy is going into that. And I feel good by the end of it. We've got them around, and they know what to do, and they're having a good time, and they're on our side. But it takes a lot of convincing.
By the end of it, I feel the same. But it feels, for some reason, like I have 50-foot weights on in the beginning of it. Whereas it used to be, I feel like there was maybe a little bit more of like a New York club like buzz. When you come in, it was already kind of like lively. It was already ready for you to like step into it, so to speak. But now it feels like you really got to ramp it up and get them like, come on, get out of your phones. I know you're looking at the world right now, but you're still kind of looking at a screen. Like, I'm a real thing. Like, reach out and
interact with me. Like,
exactly. Yeah. And that's happening a lot. I'm noticing that a lot.
You know, the interesting thing though is I feel like in a weird way, or just. It seems like the jazz, in terms of clubs, I feel like in terms of young people who want to go hear jazz music, who are not musicians, is there in a strong way. Actually. I think it's more. I feel like it's almost like it's almost, I don't know where it's coming from necessarily, but I feel like there's this interest. I mean, because I'll see people at Smalls or Mezzo or wherever, and it's a really young crowd of like kids. Like 20-year-old kids who have come and bought a ticket and like they're all going to go see. I think it was like Farnsworth's playing with Eric. Farnsworth. One example I can think of from recently is Joe Farnsworth was playing with Eric Lewis. And there was so many like kids, like really young kids. They're very eager to see it. I don't think all of them are musicians. like, I mean, obviously, like, young musicians going to hear is a kind of like
Yeah.
steady demographic that's always at the clubs.
And also, for some reason, that's always been like a Monday night. I mean, it's not exclusive to any night of the week, but like, remember the Ari Honig, like Monday nights?
Sure.
It was just like a New York, like, rite of passage sort of thing. Like, you go down there, even if you weren't like into Ari's shit, particularly, you'd go down there and like, that's where, and then Spencer's session afterwards would be like, it would the hang.
That was a real student hang. That
Kind of
one.
the whole night. But then also you might catch like a Johnny O'Neill. You definitely would, like, pretty much every night, but Mondays, or like Pete Bernstein getting a beer or something. That. It was just kind of more like that. But I guess the Farnsworth thing on Monday nights is like a continuance of that.
But I agree with what you're saying, Jeff. I've noticed that too in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
A younger demographic coming in.
Yeah,
which is great news. Like, I love
very
that.
great. Because I mean, the thing is that
Players wise, huge time. Like,
For sure.
Yeah.
do you think it
That
has any-
sucks, but the
Yeah, no, right.
but like this, I mean, I also see it at Mesro too. Like, people will come to like be out at those clubs, and like it's like young kids that again are not there because they're trying to figure out what voicing, David Bryan's playing on this, and they're just like are recognizing it's excellent music and
Yeah.
are just into it and engaged.
Yeah.
And excited about it, and
Yeah.
it's a wonderful thing to see. It's a very kind of new. I mean, I feel like even a year ago I wouldn't have necessarily said that, but I feel like there's something kind of buzz about going to a jazz club that's happening, and it's certainly great. But I mean, with it comes just I don't know. It's the audiences are all mixed bags too. There's a lot of people there for different reasons. There's still old New Yorkers coming out to shows.
Yeah. They're like, I was
and-
at Bradley's in 19, and you're like,
Oh, yeah.
damn, you saw some shit.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
it's
and,
encouraging that, man. I
I
agree
love
with you.
that.
Like,
That's like, yeah, old guard coming out.
yeah. Like, people have been going to jazz shows. They're just jazz fans. They've been going to jazz shows
There's
for
this
decades.
couple in Portland that I forget their name. They're really sweet, and they always bring like nice organic wine for everyone. But he's like, Miles Davis Friday and Saturday at the Blackhawk. I was there. All 4 sets, and I also saw the first Miles Davis band with Buddy Montgomery was playing piano subbing for Red Garland. I'm like, holy shit!
Man,
Like, he's like,
incredible,
I saw Coltrane multiple times at the Jazz Workshop. You're like, damn. Like,
you can make that shit up, though.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, if you want to. You can.
Just go up like it's a guy that was like born 10 years after those records. He's like, man, I was there, man. I smoked a joint with Coltrane after.
I delivered Louis Armstrong.
Right.
right, exactly. Well, we had this thing, and do you know Sam Greenfield? Have you ever seen him on social media? He leans a little bit more towards like fusion now, saxophone player, and like some of his stuff is funny. He's like dressed in a banana suit and shit, but he's an excellent musician, and we grew up together. And when we were in high school, he came up with this fake jazz musician named Co Higgins, and we started fooling people. We'd go around and be like, yeah, that record, it's got like Butch Warren and da-da-da and Co Higgins. And like, we'd kind of wait to see.
That's a good
like,
name,
and they'd
actually.
be like, oh yeah, I have a couple records with Co on it. And we'd be like- and so Sam told Dahi Devine, who went in the Grammy band, and then Dahi used to play on Tuesdays.
I
with
remember that
Kyle.
name.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dahi's the
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Yeah. And he took it to the Grammy band, and then all the Grammy band kids got a hold of it, and then it just took
Nice.
off. And we started seeing these posts about Co Higgins, like Pat Bartley was in Florida in high school and like knew about it. Like, it was just took off, and it just became this general concept that you could kind of like Co Higgins somebody, just like fool them into like just being like, oh yeah, he's a bad cat. I got a couple of those records on Prestige like early on. They're really
No, I feel like you really revealed this now.
Yeah.
Claffy, I would like
Say
that
that a
to
lot of jazz
continue.
musicians are pathological liars.
it sounds like a lot of jazz
Or
musicians
desperate to impress.
who
possibly.
were definitely
Yeah, I mean, that's it kind of goes without saying.
yeah.
And just desperate generally, perhaps sometimes. On many levels, spiritually, financially.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely true.
Yeah.
Me being one of them. So, what were we talking about? Audiences?
Audiences.
Well, it always looks good, 3 musicians sitting around bitching about audiences. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's,
Well, the thing about it is
endear us
that
to people.
Yeah.
I mean, it does feel like the general scene of just like fans for jazz, whatever they are, seems healthy,
Yeah.
and that's something to be kind of really welcomed.
And
it's
people are still like are very open. In a way,
Yeah.
In what
in
way?
Europe, I feel like I don't want to, slam Americans, but I'm saying you go to Europe and like somebody would be playing some super out shit, and they're just like, okay, like
Yeah.
this was our night. We lived in
accept
like
this,
Trondheim, and we came out with our like nice sweaters, and we like our kid is with a babysitter, and we dined at this like organic like home style American restaurant, and then we went and we bought tickets, and the local duo opened for then like some super out shit, and then it wasn't really our bag, but we did enjoy being here this evening, and that's like,
And we'll go again next week.
yeah, and we'll buy tickets again to the concert series for the next year, and that's like not the vibe.
No, true.
And I mean, there is an audience obviously for avant-garde here, probably bigger than in the rest of the country. Maybe Philly's
Actually,
got a really good avant-garde scene.
I wonder about that. I almost feel like outside of, I don't know, actually, I'd be curious. I mean, I can't really say, but for some reason, part of me feels like I don't know. I'm a little disconnected from the avant-garde scene here, so it's maybe tough. Maybe it's not a. I really shouldn't say anything about it, but I feel like maybe outside there's. I don't know. Actually, I don't really know.
I don't know. I can't talk much about that either.
Yeah.
Both of you guys are just tough alto
Exactly.
players. Well,
No
you play
shit.
both. You're like,
Yeah. Nick's
I'm twice as tough. That's
Well,
right.
Nick's one of the. There's not really many guys that really both play alto and tenor regularly, both on the gig, switching between it. I've always like it's. I mean, out of the
major stitch shit right there.
yeah,
Well,
but it's
I'm
also
ripping that shit off.
Well, it's
No
very
worries.
rare though, because I mean, it's very difficult. There's a reason why
hard.
it's fucking hard. It's extremely hard, and to do it as well as you do, is something I
that's
always
very-
admire.
Who was like your guy in Australia? Who's that one guy who played with Blakey who like doesn't really play anymore?
Oh, Dale. You know, I was
Dale Barlow,
texting with Dale yesterday. He lives in Bangkok these days.
Well-
So he was the hero of at least Sydney jazz, but certainly straight ahead jazz around the country when I was growing up. Dale Barlow, great tenor saxophone player, but he just kind of packed it in, moved to Bangkok, and lives the good life, I think.
Great.
He may still play, I don't know. He says, I'm playing until I run out of money. That's what he told me yesterday. So he's still doing something.
But he'll probably I hope he's making money playing.
Not in Bangkok, no.
Interesting. I thought there would be a market, right?
The reason I texted him, because I'm on my way, I'm trying to put a tour together down there later in the year, and the money is so absurdly low, I thought I'd write to him and say, there must be some places around that pay something. And he said, well, no, I'm just playing until I run out of money. There's no money here.
right. Yeah.
I'm talking about like $60 for a gig, for an international act.
Oh yeah, I believe it.
Right.
I believe it. It's getting so dire.
Well,
in
I mean,
so many different
Southeast
parts.
Asia is a ludicrous place to put together a tour, and I'm an idiot for doing it. But I love it down there, so I just I do it, and I find enough places around, enough places I can make some money that make it worthwhile going to the places where I can make no money, and put together some master classes or clinics or whatever, and make it worthwhile. But it's not.
But there are jazz clubs around there, right?
There are, yeah.
Like
There's probably tons.
There's lots of jazz clubs, but I don't know, they seem quite happy to have locals only.
But a buck goes pretty far down there, right?
It does. Like when you get your $60, you can have a great night on it.
Right, exactly. So I guess it's kind of relative to like,
True.
Yeah. But at the same time, for the international touring act,
for your
It's not a good
airfare and the doing anything. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, that is tough. But
You're amazing at putting those tours together. I've seen you do that a bunch of times.
And you do it in Europe all the time too.
I go to Europe fairly often these days, I guess, and we all know that's where you make some money. Like you can go to Germany and go to France and make a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Before COVID, for 3 years, I did Asian tours once a year. And I would go to China and Thailand and Singapore and Kuala Lumpur and wherever I could find something and wherever I knew people. But it's really just because I love the travel. Like I could just make it pay for itself and go and have a good time.
Yeah.
And play with some different cats. And I always like to do clinics down there because they don't really have much connection to American jazz down there. So it's,
Yeah.
I don't know, different opportunity.
What does it feel like the reception is?
Yeah, that's good to tie in with the crowd thing we're talking about.
I would say more looks of bafflement than here.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I
shock?
said,
General
yeah,
shock?
like we don't really know what this is. A lot of places we don't know and we don't care, but a lot of places we're curious. We don't know what this is, and we're going to pay attention and see what's going on here. But for the most part, confusion.
But a good medium swinger can kind of, I gotta say, it can speak volumes even to people who have like never heard jazz.
That's
A good conga beat, it's like people are just like, all right, I'll try this out for a few minutes.
That's what I hope in general. In fact, I think we all kind of feel that way, that if we can play that kind of music that will, something that the person who's never heard jazz before is going to go, yes, there's something in this that moves me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll listen to some other stuff.
Right.
I think that's what we're all trying to do.
Essentially at every concert.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be a swinging medium conga beat. It's kind of that X factor about, jazz music that I can't really explain.
Well, things. I mean, if it's something that feels good on a rhythmic level, whatever it is, that's going to immediately connect with people.
Right.
And then if it's with a great instrumentalist who's creating a beautiful sound out of their instrument, and then playing melodies that make sense.
When people are like, I've never been to a jazz show before, and if this is what jazz is, then I get so happy.
Yeah.
That's the best thing. Yeah,
I did it. Like I did my job. I can sleep well.
And I will say that's one of the positive things about playing in New York at the moment. We're talking about Smalls, but I feel it particularly at the Django because sometimes it's a hard crowd to play with because they really want to talk and it's loud in there and it's difficult. But I do feel like it's an opportunity that we don't always get to play music for people who've never heard this before, and maybe we can win round a couple of them. Like if we just get a couple here and a couple there who come up to you afterwards and go, I never heard this before. I had low expectations. I didn't know what to think. I thought it would suck, to be honest. Like jazz is not cool that much these days. People think it's going to be difficult and I'm not going to like it. But they come up to us afterwards and say, I actually enjoyed that.
Yeah.
That's a great opportunity, man. I feel good about that.
So I think that in pop culture, sometimes jazz is denigrated, which is like just in terms of it's just like
sometimes you go on Instagram Live at like 3 a.m. and John Mayer's sitting there like listening to Bill Evans on Blue and Green. Like,
well, that's the thing too. Is
and
that
you're like, wow, okay.
But I think that
thanks for doing that. Thanks for playing that for people.
Sure. And I think that like when it's referred to, sometimes it's referred to. It's not based on it. It's not like specifically referring to like I don't know Miles Davis or something like that. It wouldn't even be connected to people or real music. It's just kind of I think can sometimes be portrayed as this kind of like weird esoteric thing that's kind of alienating maybe.
Oh, definitely. Like especially on like a shitty Hulu show that's like runs for one season.
If you're trying to like
they crack a joke about jazz and you're just like, fuck you guys.
I know. Well, it can be kind of it can be
I like it sometimes too. Like it's nice.
Like if you're trying to like portray like a guy that's annoying, saying that he likes jazz
and
like might be like part of the thing. But
they never license anything real, by the way. It's always like it's like some dude in LA that's like playing all the instruments on Banner Box by himself. It's like, and you're like, I also hate this.
Yeah,
this
you're like, it's so terrible. Yeah. And I guess on a certain level, like as people that are jazz musicians and love the music, we can feel maybe just annoyed by just the kind of basic ignorance of it. But it's also like it's just. I mean, I'm sure there's a bunch of things that I write off that actually have depth and significance. That's just completely out of my sphere. And if someone mentions it to me, I'd be like, oh, that's it would be whatever this kind of. Maybe that's popular misconception I might have about it. It's not out of any malice or anything.
It also gives you like a grand perspective as a jazz musician. You're like, oh, like this is what people think this
of
is.
what I do.
I know maybe that's why like my gig was not well attended. Or maybe it's because I'm terrible. Also,
might be that. But the thing is also the good news is that we know that the really great jazz music's fucking great. It's like the greatest shit ever. Yeah. And that like I mean like if you put if you.
You put on Coltrane Plays the Blues.
I mean, that's
why I keep this right here.
I mean, like that's the thing. Is like the really great stuff is just great, and stands the test of time for that reason. And that doesn't mean that everyone's gonna like fall in love with it and like go buy a tenor saxophone and like that's. I mean, there's a difference between that kind of connection to it where you won't on some level want to try and do it yourself.
Isn't that deep when you meet people though that are like, I heard a Dexter Gordon record when I was 5 and I just went out. That's probably you. Like went out and bought a tenor and just that's my like.
No, I never heard Dexter Gordon until I was like 16 or 17. But
What did you listen to pre-jazz?
Billy Joel and Huey Lewis and the News.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
They were my cats.
Well, the thing is that
Good beach music.
Well, the thing is that also is like. I think that you might take for granted, like coming from Philadelphia, like from a city and actually that's a lot of American cities. Like, I mean, obviously no city like New York is kind of unique as a jazz city, but most, especially like in the Northeast, but not just like have real jazz. Is like you're just so proximate to like the center of jazz. Yeah. Place like Philadelphia has historically so many great musicians from there, so many great musicians there. So it's like you have a history there and a connection there and real jazz clubs, and you have a chance to, first of all, come to New York it's easy to come to New York if you live in Philadelphia. Yeah. So like there's all this stuff that you're immediately exposed to, where if you live in where I'm from in Canada, Australia, I would think even more so, like it's like real jazz is kind of a rare thing to like.
It's a big treat.
And to get actually in front of and to kind of hear live. It happens. I mean, of course, like all the like bands will come to Sydney for the festival,
but it's a big fucking deal when it happens.
But it's a big deal, and you get it in a flash, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
And of course, you can buy records. You can do a lot of stuff like that. And also just being in like America, like the American the environment of these cities and of this country where like the music comes from. Are you just
saying all this so you get citizenship? It really sounds you sound like a great patriot right now.
Full disclosure, I do have a pending green card application, so I really want to get it through.
Any jazz fans working in the New York City visa
office, I love this country, and I'll defend whatever. Yeah.
Great bald guy with a big red beard talking about
the greatness of the heritage of this country.
In the capital. Take it easy. No, I'm just kidding.
Jeff, what town did you grow up in?
I'm from Calgary, which is in western
So
Canada.
What about jazz clubs there? Were there
there was a jazz club there that was first of all called the Jazz Club, which is an important distinction. And it was called the Beatnik, and it was a cool club, and I think it did okay. I mean, it was around when I was around when I was a teenager, and it closed. I think it closed more because, from what I understand, I think it was a successful in terms of a business, but I think the person doing it just wanted to stop doing it.
Yeah. Was it a hang for you? Like, is that
no? Like the idea of like a hang, I had no conception of whatsoever at all. It was just a place that had music I could go hear, but like, I think that just there wasn't like a. I mean, I think there maybe to a certain degree was. I was never really part of it, and I didn't really even understand that was a thing that could be happening. So I can't even really necessarily say if it was or if it wasn't.
Where you're from, Toronto? No, I'm just kidding. You're from Calgary, place that people fly over or sometimes transfer.
Have Olympics there. Sometimes.
Yeah, rude. 1988.
Like flying over it's a while ago, pal. But flying over it in the winter, it looks crazy, kind of.
Like in what sense?
No civilization. It's just like all white, like snow, and you're just like.
Well, it's like Canada's a very vast country.
Yeah, Canada's huge.
It's very vast.
For America's
snow-covered country.
It's pretty big.
Fucking watch your mouth, buddy. But it was just. I mean, actually, we were talking about like PJ earlier. That's why like guides like him were so important, because you'd hear them and they'd be like sound like the records, like something like that was kind of close. Yeah,
because they just had like 4 45s that they could only get at the local like trade shop that also had milk and bread.
I was thinking about that the other day, like before internet and before even easy delivery of records around the world, where if you lived far away from America, it's interesting the way jazz developed in other parts of the world. Like in Australia, there were bebop guys in the 50s who would have been like all listening to the same record. It's like there were
bebop guys in Australia in the 50s?
Yeah.
No one talked to me about that when I was there.
Yeah.
I'm sure people just generally didn't talk to you while you were there. Right?
You were on a kangaroo farm. Right. I feel like they were all just sitting around that one record listening to it over and over again. And it turns into some pretty interesting music. Like it doesn't really sound like American jazz, but they've taken what they can out of this one record and turned it into something else.
Who are the cats? Who are these guys?
I'm talking about, when I say 50s, they were growing up in the 50s, I guess. But there was, my teacher was a piano player called Bobby Gabbett, who was the bebop guy. It was a really small bebop scene in Sydney, and they had really interesting ways of playing. And you would never hear anything like it in here. And Americans who would visit would go, well, why would you want to play like that? It's not.
Yeah.
It wouldn't fit the American way of playing bebop, but they've got it all comes directly out of Charlie Parker. Like it's Bird and Monk, and
Are you talking about it was like unconventional rhythm section playing, or I'm kind of lost?
I guess I'm talking about horn players and piano players particularly, because these are the guys I knew. But they're growing up in the 50s, they're listening to records from America, and they've developed this way of playing which turns into like Australian jazz. And it's...
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't even know. But you got to send me some of these records for me to
it's some pretty strange playing, some of it, but it's also great. It's like I was thinking about, music out of the Caribbean, and they've heard, the only music they've heard was like radio coming from Miami. Like at certain times of night, they can hear some jazz coming from America, and then they've turned this into ska, or they've turned it into something else.
Jocko's the opposite, right? He would tune his radio into the
Really?
Cuban stations as he was falling asleep and listen to it.
Yeah, right.
And that's why he's got like the sickest groove on Latin shit.
And that's why he really leans left.
Exactly. And then like Cuban bass players after Jocko, like actually all bass players after Jocko, upright or electric, there's certain things that he did that you just can't escape it.
Like what, actually?
Like,
I mean, it's best you can...
There's like certain things on straight eighth grooves and pickups and little ways of getting around a groove or getting around, electric bass sound. I mean, completely changed. It's like dealing with Brecker or somebody like that, where it just totally changed the game of, every tenor player after Brecker. It's pretty hard to escape his influence. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Upright bass player is not as much with Jocko, even though he was an upright bass player first. I mean, there's some guys like myself and others. It's like Jocko was my first love, and that led to that fretless bass thing led to upright. But just to say that, like, I don't know, Hiatus Coyotes, they're Australian, right? And they're like probably influencing the world now.
What?
Hiatus Coyote?
No,
these guys?
what's that?
It's a band. It's a popular band. Connor knows them.
I don't know anything about popular things.
What about popular Australian bands that were influenced by the secret bebop?
the secret bebop language of Sydney.
Yeah.
Well, I will say that there was...
And that's the thing, man. That Sydney stuff, that was the real thing.
That's right.
You don't even know, man. You weren't even there. Yeah.
I will say that there is the community is small enough in Australia that everybody had to play everything. So for real, like the pop records in the '60s were all made up of jazz musicians because everybody they're the only musicians in town. So that crossover is complete. Like you don't really get that here. In America, people specialize. You play jazz or you play pop or whatever.
Right.
Other parts of the world, it's not like that.
Well,
kind of miss it because I used to play all sorts of things as well. I don't get to do that anymore.
Good if you want to.
I guess, but like I say, everyone's specialized. You can't go out and find, I don't know, a top 40 gig somewhere because they don't really exist in New York. But people are specialized. There are people who do that all the time.
I mean, there are a lot of top 40 bands in New York, but you're right. It's like...
Well, it's also there's enough work.
Yeah, that's true. There is.
There's enough work that you can play. What? I mean, compared to other places, yeah, there is.
Yeah.
If you're a dope,
maybe not enough.
If you're a dope bass player in like Des Moines, you're working.
Well, you're working, but you're probably working playing everything. You're probably. I mean, if you're a great bass,
you can't not playing jazz every night.
Yeah, you're playing jazz 7 nights a week in Des Moines.
If you're an upright player, if you're like the one upright player,
I guess. But if another one comes to town,
it's game over. Game over. That is a local scene thing, actually.
Yeah, but they don't like that. They don't like that shit. When somebody
that's the whole thing. Is there's these small scenes. It's kind of like a famine mentality. Like another guy comes in is good. I remember seeing that sort of stuff.
I definitely felt that over the last couple of years, traveling to a couple places.
Yeah,
like I'm out there, and they're like,
oh, hey buddy, how you doing?
Back.
Yeah. Oh, hey, Claff.
Yeah, it's not a good feeling. But with horn players, it's kind of chill. Probably.
I guess no. I think small. It's smaller. The smaller the market, the more it happens.
Yeah,
regardless.
Yeah, because I think that's the thing about
fierce,
and that's the thing is also, I mean, a place like New York, it's so big and the scene's so big, and it's what makes it kind of healthy in a way. I mean, whatever things you might, all the various sort of things you can
but like
muse
the
about.
masses of jazz students moving here. And like the lack of places to play is.
Well, that's more of like
crazy, or is it stark? Was it, Nick, you were working like at Smalls when I first got here. Was it always like this and I'm just getting old?
What do you mean? Was it always like what?
Amount of like kids moving to New York to study and play jazz, most of which...
Yeah, it was kind of the same, I think. I mean, I just remember every... What is it, September when school starts? Yeah, the place would just be flooded with people you'd never seen before. Yeah. And it happened every year.
Yeah.
And they would just disappear. Like
it's the tide. It rolls in and out.
Yeah, but
ashes to ashes.
Exactly.
Well,
but you see them for the first month and they're there every night and then you never see them again. And maybe like I would get people coming from Australia who come to New York to go to school. They come and see me at Smalls because they knew I worked there and somebody in Sydney told them to come and talk to me. And I'd say, great, come down and see me all the time.
Fuck off.
Yeah, fuck off. I don't want to see you again.
Be like, that'll be $20.
Like, that'll be $25.
No, come down and see, like, come every night. We're here, and I would see them for the first few nights, and then I wouldn't see them for years. Oh, I've been too busy at school. What the fuck are you doing in New York? Like, what are you here for? Like, go study somewhere else. The whole point of being here is to come out and listen to music, and I don't know.
Hey,
I
man,
never
you
see
saw me every night. I just didn't give up.
That's true.
Yeah.
Didn't give up.
I kind of feel
And now
like
I own
now you have given up.
320 that I got used off reverb.
Right. I think the thing is also about the waves of students coming. Like, I think it's more of a function of the schools. There's a lot of schools that have it's new.
Well, you were a professor at one. You were teaching the Smalls Live
I was
class.
Adjunct instructor. But
Adjunct instructor.
Yes. No. But yeah, it was like, the groups of students will come in and out, and it's I think the thing is that like, it's a given that most of them are not gonna go and have a career as full-time jazz performers. And to be honest, like that's, I don't think necessarily a negative thing. I mean, it gets weird when you factor how much money it costs. That's where it can become like a dubious thing, because it's not like it's free to go to any of these schools. And I think that any young jazz musician who's going to school really needs to just think long and hard, like, is $250,000 at least of debt to attain a degree a wise decision? It depends
I'm glad you're talking about this. This is like to me like Tim Dillon talking about the subprime mortgage thing. It's like
that's too much of a deep cut. I think.
No. There's some podcast listeners on here that are
But I think the thing is that like I think it's the thing is that actually to be a successful jazz musician you don't need to do that. And it might become an obstruction to becoming that, because the thing is you're in school
to be a collegiate level professor, you're going to need your master's.
Well, so here's the only thing. The only reason to really get any sort of degree is if you're
in jazz,
in anything, is if you're entering a field which requires a level of certification to enter it. Meaning that if it requires you to hold this degree to get in the door.
Yeah.
You can't just walk into a law firm and be like, I'm a genius law guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, maybe. Feel like I know the law so fucking well.
First thing you need to know is the word lawyer.
Lawyer, yeah.
Right.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, there's barriers to entry, like, and depending on the law firm you're trying to get into, it'll depend which school you want. These are all like barriers to entry that if you want to be there, you have to jump through those hoops.
Right.
The thing is that there are, and jazz is one of them, that there is no certification required to step on the stage, any stage. No one's gonna ask Kurt Rosenwinkel to like what his GPA was at Berkeley, or even know if he finished. It has no bearing whatsoever on whether or not he gets on that stage. And you could have all the certification in the world and not be ready to get hired to play at a coffee shop.
Right.
So the thing is that the certification actually, unless you're going to be entering back into the school system teaching, that's kind of the only juncture where someone's going to be like, what degrees you have. You cannot get a job as a tenured professor unless you have a master's degree. You can't be a department head unless you have a PhD, probably.
Yeah.
So if that's the path you're going, you have to go through those things. But that's only a small percentage of the kind of work out there.
Right.
And it's not really connected to how great you play.
Not at all.
At all. And then it becomes a real thing. It's like, well, what are you? Listen, if you come from a family where $250,000 doesn't mean anything, or if you are great and they get in school where they want you and gives you a huge scholarship, yeah, might as well do it. I mean,
yeah, or I know people that were on like major R&B acts making lots of money, and they're like, I want to go to school to learn jazz harmony, and you're like, all right, like makes sense. I mean, now you can just like take a fucking open studio class. And
well, that's the thing too. Is almost it really then starts to cut the legs out from this jazz education thing. Is that the information is very accessible, and it kind of always was in a way.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's been accessible for a long time. You just need to.
I mean, and to be perfectly honest, if you have a stack of records and you get your ears where they need to be in the first place, it's all there anyway.
You're golden. Yeah.
You know, like I mean, so.
But in this country, you have to go to school. Like it's drilled into everybody.
Well, there's a social imperative too. Like if you don't go to school, there's a lot of weight, and I think that young people feel that weight. They like look around. Like if you're just like, oh, you're not going to college, like that.
Oh, that's a huge social. Hey, Connor, can you pump on the turn on that air conditioner? It's getting a little hot. Sorry for our listeners, but you're gonna have to deal with a little bit of ambient noise.
And if you're like I think that's the thing is that like but the truth is that if on the other side of it, which all of us are, you can't say that you needed to do. I mean, you might it might be a positive experience on a lot of levels. Like I went to jazz school; it was a positive experience.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's also different for someone who's international. If you're not from this country, you need.
Well, that's like the main way that people get to the U.S. Like jazz musicians.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah.
Because the visa shit is so fucked.
Well, it's kind of. I mean, I guess you can come in cold and get an 01, but I mean, if you're outside of the country, I mean, you'd have to understand a lot. I mean, I figured out all that stuff when I was here.
Yeah.
And outside of the country, I don't know if I mean, I would have had to.
Maybe now in the age of information.
Maybe, you know.
How did you get over here, by the way? It's not to interrupt you, Jeff.
First of all, the international student thing is something that I had not considered because I was putting everybody in the same group as somebody who's had the wool pulled over their eyes as having school being necessary. But you're right, as somebody coming from overseas, that does make getting here a lot easier. Mm-hmm. I came over first as a tourist, like just on a tourist visa. I did that for 6 weeks the first time. Then I was able to come here for a year on a tourist visa, and then I won a green card lottery. So I got extremely lucky, and very few people get to do that.
Canadians are not allowed to apply for the green card lottery.
That's true.
Why?
Too close.
Too close, yeah.
Mexicans as well.
Yeah,
Mexican can't do it either.
Who came up with that one?
Probably someone that didn't, some like racist immigration guy. They didn't want Mexicans coming in. They're like, let's say North America. So they're like, let's throw 30 million Canadians in there, and then we'll seem like we're just like.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That is weird, I will say.
It's a weird thing. Yeah.
That's the way it is.
It's funny because people, lots of Europeans would oftentimes be like, "Oh, it must be no problem for you to come here." I'm like, "No, it's every bit as hard as it is for you."
Issue for
and in some ways harder.
So you just came on over and.
Well, the U.S. has this green card lottery system, which is like it's just a lottery. It's just like you apply to it.
Wait, so I was lost on that. You won that lottery?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's literally a lottery. You just when I was doing it, which is 2001, I think. You had to literally write your name on a piece of paper and attach a photograph to it with a paperclip and mail it for real, and then mail it to whatever department it was. And then
it's like the back of a cereal box, like sweepstakes.
Absolutely, it was just like that. And then they wrote me back a letter saying you've been shortlisted. And then I had to go through all jump through the hoops and go back to Australia and talk to the embassy there and prove that I'm a real person and
not a drug trafficker. Or
not yet.
Not yet.
But that's what you do. But it really is that simple. It's literally a lottery, and it's still out there. Still works.
It's fully a thing. Yeah.
It's called the Visa Diversity Program.
Yeah, it's kind
just
of
the idea is that like, not everybody is the same who's getting in. Like we're not just getting.
This is like bump bump and there's 60.
Right, we're not just getting doctors from around the world. We need people from all walks of life.
Come on down.
Right.
Yeah.
Syrians are not allowed in either. But
they're not allowed in the.
There are various countries around the world who are not eligible for the.
Yeah, I think if you're like out there like talking shit on America. They're just like,
Wait till you're inside to do that.
Yeah.
And then it's applauded.
Sure.
But if you're doing it from the outside,
Then it's a
they're
podcast.
like, you're not getting in here.
Yeah. When did you first visit New York City? I mean, all you had to do was get on
I came to
Amtrak.
America, and I visited New York a bunch as a kid because my mom had an agency, or was a part of a talent agency in Midtown East.
Right.
And also before that, really, my dad was playing gigs in the city, and I would ride along in my little oversized suit and bow tie, and I would set up the sound equipment,
Right.
and I would get my little stipend. And once I was 16 doing that, I would go take a cab to the Iridium, and I saw Kenny Garrett, I remember, with Corey Henry. It was unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
Very cool. Except I took one of those black cars, like 10 blocks, and they charged me like $40. And I was like, yes, mister. I remember meeting Justin Brown. He was like 21. Already just ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of my vibe. I'd come up to the city, and I was... Okay, actually, first it would have been Blue's Clues. I was on the first 3 seasons of Blue's Clues on Nickelodeon.
right.
Connor's face over there freaking out.
Right, I've heard you mention that.
Yeah, children's TV show.
Right.
My mother was a casting agent. She was like, "Oh, I don't know what this is going to be. I'll just put my kids on it."
Just some good old-fashioned Hollywood nepotism.
Yeah,
That's class.
exactly. I'm sure she can't get in trouble for it now, but. And my sister and I were on the first 3 seasons.
Oh, wow.
And it turned out to be the largest children's show, probably besides Sesame Street, for like 10 years. And then I quit. I was already a diva at the age of 8. I was like, I have to go to my friend's birthday party. They're like, you need to film this. I had a mic on me.
You're like, man, I've just been like at this for so long, and I'm just
for so long.
and when is it gonna come around for me?
Craft. Like, is it really gonna be $100 a night for the rest of my life, or what the fuck? No, I'm kidding. I wasn't talking about the jazz scene in New York. Yeah, so I was already a diva at the age of 8, and I quit to go to my friend's birthday party.
Fair enough. You said I've
Sounds
been doing
about
this
right.
for half my
Yeah.
life. Like it's time to give it a rest.
From 6 to 8.
Actually, the kid
Yeah.
version I'm more sympathetic to than the current version.
The current version is
Man, shut the
atrocious.
fuck up, man.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just the worst. But yeah, so that's why I came to New York.
It's kind of it seems to me a bigger deal than I would expect it to be to come from Philadelphia to New York.
It's a huge deal.
Well, to me, it's like coming from one of the suburbs to just come in. Like you just could jump on the train
It's
and
not
you're there.
like that culturally.
I know
Like,
that.
oh, I don't go to the city. It's like those
I know.
people that like live in Brooklyn and they're like, I haven't been to Manhattan in like 60
I guess so,
years,
right.
and you're like, word. But Philly's very much like that, especially with the jazz scene. That
Well, you had an independent. I mean, that was a scene. It may not. I don't know what it's like now, but there was a very defined Philadelphia jazz scene.
oh, absolutely.
and
still
for a
is.
place that's like a 90-minute drive from here, seems weird to me. But that's the way it is.
But the drummers, like, we have the best drummers. Like, I mean,
sure.
obviously, New York's like, just like everyone,
Well, everyone's
even from
here
Philly
now.
is here. Like,
Right.
so it just doesn't even count. But like, Philly has this level of musicianship that's just so high. Like, everyone's groove, everyone's time, everyone's feel. Like, not everyone knows a zillion tunes. That's kind of like a New York thing. But like, whatever people play in Philly, they play it really well, and they play it with great conviction and feeling and all this shit.
And it was a specific sound, like the
Oh yeah,
Philadelphia sound.
the
was
modal
thing.
thing, like I'll say it. We got a lock on modal stuff. It's funny. Jimmy Garrison grew up in Philadelphia. McCoy Tyner, John Coltrane. Elvin Jones is from Detroit, but as a result of that, every drummer in Philadelphia comes out of Elvin Jones because of the influence of the John Coltrane Quartet and how often they were playing. What's up? How often they were playing in Philly. If you look at this Coltrane book, like every time he came off a tour, they'd go play 2 weeks in Philly. And I grew up with all these people, like older mentors, would be like, I sat in with Train. You know, I sat in with Train down at this club in '66 with Rashid, and Rashid's brother is my. Like everybody knows each other. It's just kind of like this, like Philly Coltrane stuff. It's amazing, the connection. But it's a very well-defined scene, and coming up the Turnpike for some reason is a massive deal, and Philly people can get kind of sheepish about it. And then there are some people like Oren, who's in Philly, but he's also here all the time, and like it's nothing. He's just like, boom, I'm up the Turnpike. You know, Mickey Roker lived in Philly until he passed. Jimmy Merritt. There's a lot of guys who are like, still.
Well, I think that no matter where you're from, like New York is kind of especially like entering it for the first time is like kind of a force to reckon with, even if you're from 90 minutes away.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And on every level, just as a city itself, of course, in the jazz scene too.
It's people think it's not as big of a deal coming from Philly, but it's actually somehow.
I believe it is. It's just it's unusual for me.
I think for the perspective of guys,
from the
like
perspective
us.
of both of you guys, because it's another major jazz metropolis,
Right.
You know, with a whole vibrant, you know, tenor players. You got Larry McKenna, Bootsy Barnes,
sure.
you know, Victor North, like all these guys who can like really.
I got to learn more about that Bootsy Barnes. I keep hearing
He
about
passed
him.
away, yeah, but
I
he
heard,
was incredible, just like soulful.
I guess he and Kyle Kohler used to play together.
Oh
a lot.
yeah,
I think
Kyle.
he was,
Kyle was playing in Philly constantly when I was growing up, and Larry McKenna, who's
Right.
still around and playing incredible. He's just kind of like the. I don't even want to say Stan Getz in a way, but his language is just like it's like perfect, beautiful lines. And John Swana's got that thing too. John Swana's there.
Yeah,
you know?
right.
It's just so many cats. But-
You've seen that great Miles Davis.
Oh yeah, that's great.
I mean, like
have you seen that, Nick?
I don't think so. What are we
It's
talking
an
about?
interview with Miles and the band that's
it was a like a
playing
Philadelphia
him on. It's
talk
Christian
show, right?
McBride, Joey D, and maybe Little John Roberts. I can't remember who's playing drums, but they're like all 16 and in high school. And Swan is sitting in the audience, and he gets up
Wow.
and he's like, "Have you ever played the electric valve instrument?" And Miles is like, "I got 6 of them," or something like that.
Oh,
And he's like, "Who's the kid on the organ?" And that's
Yeah.
when Joey D
Yeah.
got picked up to go on the road with
shit.
him.
Yeah, right.
You like watch it happen.
Wow.
The best is that because they had like it's one of those things
Oh,
where
they
like
have 3 trumpet
they
players.
have trumpet players. They're like, "Hey, Miles, we got some trumpet players for you to listen to and tell us what you think."
Yeah.
And the first one is like this like little kid, and they're like, we call him Little Miles, and he gets
Oh,
up and he's just
man.
like he's like 10.
I think that's Daoud El Bakara or another trumpet player. I can't remember.
He gets up.
How can you
from
do that
what
to
I
somebody?
what I remember is he plays and Miles is kind of like he needs to work on his tone. Just kind of like
just like no
and like the kid
sympathy.
just kind of puts his and like splits.
No sympathy for the fact that he's like literally 10
Yeah, and that's the
years
thing. Like the only positive thing, like I think maybe I don't even remember what he said about John Swana, but the one thing he's like, who's playing organ? Like,
old. Yeah.
And
Well, he
it
just
was
knew right away,
yeah,
Joey D.
yeah.
And then Joey D went on the road with him for like 2 years.
Right.
yeah, that's kind of the thing. The best guys, it's like immediate and apparent, and like it's just unquestionable.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah. Great. So this is a part of the podcast where we start checking time, being like, how much time we got?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We're at we can go another couple of minutes. We're at an hour 10, I think.
Hour 10. Ooh, that's a nice.
That's a
That's a
long
nice
podcast.
pod.
Should we call it?
I think I kind of got to pee. That's enough.
I just want to make sure everyone feels like they've spoken their truth.
I don't think there's anything I needed to get off my chest that I've not done.
Yeah.
You feel pretty content? Mm-hmm. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Any upcoming dates? Any, you know?
Keep in mind that Claff's going to release this in 6 months, so it'll.
That's true, isn't it? Yeah, and it only goes in.
mumble off the mic. They'd be able to hear what you're saying.
It only gets released in New York City, so no, that's fine.
It's nothing.
Come and find me anywhere. I'll be in Chicago in the middle of August.
Where's that?
Winter's Jazz Club.
Oh yeah, it's nice.
On a Saturday night, it might be the 19th, but I'm
Oregon?
not sure. Yes, with the Soul Message Trio from the Green Mill. We're bringing them over to the
Soul
to Winters.
Message.
Soul Message. Incredible.
Great organ trio.
You got a Smallsy coming up?
I think in the fall.
All right.
Yeah.
Any afternoon sets?
The afternoon set is great, man.
Afternoon
We
set is
good way
great.
to go more. I like it down there.
Yeah. This week.
We should go
Yeah, let's go hang
this
down there.
week.
Yeah.
Saturday.
Saturday.
Kyle's got.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm going to that too.
can't.
Well, this time this is probably. It's just,
I don't know. This might be out tonight. So we'll just leave.
Oh,
no,
shit.
I might edit it up quick before I go to see Oppenheimer.
Oh.
Oppenheimer
Oppenheimer.
with Banak. Banak.
He's in that? Wow.
He's
in
it,
anything. Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
he did just enough fucking TikTok reels that they actually noticed him. His balding, Sinatra imitating ass. They noticed him. That's going to be the running theme of this podcast, just to tear Benny up.
Yeah.
with
And never have him on ever.
Never,
never
No,
once.
I already have one with him from the past where I had to edit out farts because they were so loud that literally I had to edit them out of condenser mics.
Wow.
So he'll make another appearance. We got to get
Put the farts out separately, like in a separate podcast.
fart pack.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would probably I
Pod
have more of a
farts.
chance of getting a MacArthur grant if I did that than I
Sure.
would just playing bass in a normal way. Check out Nick Hempton online, nickhempton.org.
No.
No
I mean, you
website?
can try. No, nickhamptonband.com.
NickHemptonBand.com.
Yeah.
You've had this one for a long time.
I've had that for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure JeffMcGregorMusic.com has lapsed and is probably available to pick up. So,
And that brings us to our ad read. Wix. No, we don't have any ads yet because this is small time.
Right.
All right, let's call it.
Okay, great.
Thanks, man.
Thank
That was
you.
great.